Welcome to Revenue Boost, a marketing podcast, where we dive into strategies that drive real business growth. I'm your host, Kerry Curran, and this episode is The Art of Selling Math to English Majors, Strategies for Building Trust Between Sales and Marketing for Revenue Growth. Today, I'm joined by Jim Nichols, experienced CMO and founder of Exclamation Marketing Solutions. In today's episode, Jim and I discuss the critical yet often misunderstood relationship between sales and marketing. This topic we're both extremely passionate about, so you'll benefit from actionable steps to alignment, breaking down complex ideas into relatable concepts, and how to effectively build a marketing engine that drives business growth. So if you're a business leader looking to strengthen sales and marketing collaboration and accelerate revenue, this episode is packed with practical strategies you can implement today. Let's go. And welcome, Jim. Please introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your background and experience.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me on. You know, I'm your biggest fanboy, so we'll just move on from there. My name's Jim Nichols. I've been working in marketing for longer than I care to admit. I started before digital and worked in packaged goods, but have since worked on the brand, the agency, and the media partner or technology partner side. So I've been fortunate enough to have a really broad background in that way and to understand what's similar about the different organizations, but also what's different. So currently I am running a small agency called Exclamation Marketing that focuses on what I call stratacution, which is basically working with A and B stage companies to set a general strategic framework and then get programs into the field, start testing messages, etc. To get them just out there and selling faster.
Yeah, no, that's great, and it's definitely an area that's much needed, as we're seeing a lot of startups have the great idea but don't really know how to bring it to market. So,
and I feel like there's just so often that there's that disconnect, which is going to be our theme here, between sales and marketing. Like, I hate it when you walk into an organization and sales thinks marketing is clueless and marketing thinks sales is lazy, right? And
right.
in a way, they're both right, but they're both fundamentally wrong. There's just a Mars and Venus kind of a situation going on. But we have to find alignment if we're going to make these companies grow and be stronger.
Right. Yeah. And that's an area that I've been leaning into, as we've talked about, because there's, to your point, a lot of times marketing is perceived as, fluffy, the order takers, the ones that make your PowerPoint look nice. But, that's a lot of the research and work that I've been doing as well of revenue-based marketing, really tying back the connection between a strong marketing strategy, to your point of with the companies you're working with, getting them set up to go to market and kind of starting that process. And it's more than just having a really good product, and sales shouldn't always be the first point of connection. So I'd love to hear a bit of like the approach that you take for your clients or some of the challenges that you've solved for them.
Sure. I'd say in almost every case, I walk into a situation where this is kind of true, where the organizations don't really recognize the potential value of marketing as a business engine, right? It's why I was so excited to read more about Revenue Boost and your organization, because when we get the alignment between marketing and sales, it can work beautifully. The challenge for sellers, right, is that you need to have a really good story and you need to have this balance between what I need this week, right, and what I need 2 years from now. And so often what I see in startups is that there's a sheer force of will sales effort in the beginning, where like the CEO, because they have a vision for this product and they're so enthusiastic and excited about it, they can sell it. But there's no scalability or repeatability, right? And so you bring in sellers and there's no training for them and there's no real story and because people can't people don't have the same background that entrepreneur has driven that entrepreneur for 24 hours a day since. And so I
Right.
feel like a big part of my job is to gain the trust with sales and to prove that I'm aligned with them, but at the same time to really start saying, okay, let's think a little bit more about the customer's perspective rather than our perspective, and
Hmm.
let's talk in terms of what they're going to understand. I work with a lot of MarTech companies, and so a big issue is that the startups are selling math, and marketing people tend to be English majors, right? And so I feel like a lot of my job is to sell math to English majors, and so you've got to get conceptual and talk high level and get away from the language that creates distance, right? Like algorithm to me is one of
Right.
those words, because we all kind of know that it's a good thing, but most people don't actually
Hmm.
know what it means, right? And I always start by saying, algorithm just means way, right? We have an
Yeah.
algorithm too.
Yeah.
It's like we have a way to do this, and it's mathematical. It's like, oh,
Right.
okay, I
Yeah.
can live with that,
Yeah.
right? So trust is important, but then I think also really building in that empathy and also showing that I am just as focused as they are on creating opportunities, right? I'm
Right.
just doing it from a slightly different perspective and angle, and I'm trying to do it so we have something to work on today, but that we have more to work on in the future. And that's where we just have to get that time perspective between the two groups, get some alignment there.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think it's what's been really interesting in the conversations I've been having is, one fractional CMO, fractional CMO that I spoke with. I asked her about the kind of the founders and how much do they often, the very broad generalization of all founders, but really lean into marketing. And she said often the challenge is, to your point, of like the people who lived and breathed that product, they think that they have it covered, and they don't think they need that marketing support. And then, speaking with another a woman, Cynthia White, who is on one of my other podcasts, she does market research, and she said so often they'll come to her with a product and say, now find me the
A customer.
customers. Yeah. And then it's like, find me the audience fit. And so it's like, that's what excites me about, kind of the stories you have, and the work that I've been doing is, they're right. Somebody knows that their product or solution is unique, but unless they have that framework, that storytelling, and getting it out of just the data of, we do X percentage at, Y cost, it's this is why this makes your life better. This is how it makes,
Yeah.
this is the audience that it fits for. And this is like, I like what you said about putting it into the customer's perspective. This is why they want it, not that you want it. Yeah.
Well, and this is why I fell in platonic love with you the first time I talked to you, because in the industry in which we
It's mutual.
operated, this, kind of
Yeah.
partnership space, right?
Hmm.
So many companies are focusing on me, right? It's like, this is what
Yeah.
I do. And we've both worked at agencies. We've both spent a lot of times at
Hmm.
agencies, right? And we've both been in a situation where you're pitching the biggest brand in the world. You're pitching, let's you and I pitch PepsiCo, right? Or Coca-Cola. And you walk
Yeah.
in and the standard deck that they present is 93 slides about the agency that talks about the
Hmm.
office in
Hmm.
Helsinki and this and
Yes.
that. And they don't care, right? None of that matters.
No.
And so like the first thing I try to do with the deck is all the stuff about us, one slide, right? We're
Yeah.
big, we're
Yeah.
bold, we've got great clients. Now
And
let's
this
talk
is
about
why
you.
what the benefit is to you, right? Like we talked about that
Yeah,
too. It's not
exactly. And
just,
to
I'm the
they talk about
biggest,
the
I'm the
I'm sorry.
oldest. No, yeah, go ahead.
Yes, right. And it's just what it shows to me is a lack of empathy and relevance and understanding. If you're picking an agency, what would be worse qualities than a lack of empathy, right? Because
Yeah.
that's how we get stories in. The last job that I had working for another company was at Partnerize, and when I interviewed for the job, they had like 5 or 6 finalists for the CMO role. And I was told in my interview, you're the first marketing person that's asked me about leads and opportunities and what the situation is there. A lot of people have told me about elevating the brand and all the rest of this. And But what you're saying is that your job is to drive opportunities. And it's like, well, yeah, I mean,
Right.
this is B2B,
Connecting it.
and, there's VC money in here and private equity money in here. And, they don't care about blue 212 or two blue through 213. And I'm not belittling the importance of brand dress, but
Yeah. Yeah.
ultimately, if you're not selling stuff, you're not adding value, right? And you're not building the business in which you're operating.
Right. Yeah. And so that's, I've been on the business development side and marketing side for agencies since the aughts. Um, and I remember the stories when we first started and, working with consultants as well and saying, I've worked at some really big brands. I was at iProspect and I was with Group M. And to your point, like you can't come in and say we're the biggest. It needs to
Who
be, but
cares?
how is that beneficial? And when it comes to the agencies, it's the we've done the research. We understand what your business challenge is, and this is how we are going to solve it with our arsenal of solutions. And sometimes it's like this solution and this solution. It's not, one size fits all.
Right. And I was on business development team too. I was a comms
Yeah.
planner for a lot of the time that I worked at
Hmm.
Cara, for instance. And
Yeah.
when we pitched, I got to do the fun part, which was the 20-minute unit about this is what we think about you and your business. How
Hmm.
are we right? How are we wrong? Right. And
Yeah.
based on how are we right, like here are the ideas that we had, right? We recognize you know more
Hmm.
about the business than we do, but we wanted to come in here with a perspective and a point of view
Yeah.
because that's what you want from us, right? And most of the time we were pretty right. There were times though when we were completely wrong, but still won the
Yeah.
business because we had tried, right? That we had
Right.
actually thought through their needs.
Right. Or even just demonstrating the process that you took. So demonstrating that we will, if
Yes.
this isn't right, we do have a way that we will want to learn with you. And I always, to that point as well, I always talk about one of the first initiatives in the scope of work is a knowledge transfer. Like this is what we know today, but once we're working together, we're going to learn everything we can about you to ensure what we're doing is customized.
Well, and I think that's really important. And you and I both know that like when you work for agencies, you ask an agency what's different, and it's immediately like deer in the headlights for everybody, right? And it
Right,
becomes, well,
right,
well, it's the people. It's like, well, the problem there is that agencies have 30% turnover, right? And so
yeah,
the people
yeah,
that I'm hiring are going to be gone, right? So you've got to have a process or a thing that you're better at, right?
right,
Or IP, that
yeah,
that and
yeah,
the agencies, both the agencies that the major agencies that we've worked for are now trying to build their own platforms and IP because that's the only way you're going to keep a client, right? That's the only way
right,
you're going to
right,
add value. But to me, the other
right,
thing when I talk to CEOs, one of the things that I like to say, and this is not my original concept by any means, but are you a vitamin or are you oxygen? Right. And so if you're a vitamin for a customer, that's great. You make things better. That doesn't mean we can't sell that, right? But what if we could create a story
right.
where you are the oxygen that drives your customers' businesses, right?
I
So
love that.
Salesforce,
Yeah.
in a way, like most people hate Salesforce, right? But it's oxygen, right?
Hmm.
There's nothing
Hmm.
you can do. And I would say most of the people that hate Salesforce just don't know how to use it, right? But
Right.
regardless of that, it's just like what Oracle has done for years, that kind of 10 out of the top 10 auto companies use Oracle. Well, I better use Oracle, right? Because everybody
Right.
else
Right.
does. We have to give what we do importance, right? And you don't do
Hmm.
that with we have this feature and this feature and this feature. It's like, what is your
Right.
vision?
Right.
What is your and you were able to articulate in our first conversation like what was fundamentally different about the company you worked for versus the other
Yeah.
92 that are out there. And that to
Right.
me is what makes compelling marketing. It's what gets opportunities.
Well, and thank you. And it's a lot of the themes coming up for stronger marketing, for stronger revenue based marketing, is the having that storytelling and that brand identity becoming the core of the brand, of the culture, and being innovative. So whether it's I always think about you're, as a practitioner or even as the sales strategist, you need to be innovative about how you're going to solve their business challenges. And sometimes it's bringing in something you've never done before. I have a couple of examples where, um, I don't believe it. I should clarify. I don't believe in selling like vapor, but I do believe in selling the potential. And so there's definitely times where I'm like, look, we've never done A plus C for a client before, but I believe strongly in A and our capabilities in C. So I think that we can do this. Let's pitch that as the custom solution. And again, to your point of like, if you can demonstrate the potential and your passion for becoming an extension of that client's team and driving those business results, like that's what's going to get them excited, is something new and different.
And I think different clients have different appetites for innovation, right? And so that's part of what you do. But as an agency, you need to find clients that are aligned with your way of doing business, right? Like we see, I don't remember the agency that did the subservient chicken. I don't know if you remember that from years and years ago, right? It was just weird and off the wall and everything else. And it worked for Burger King, right? Because that was what they were looking for. They were looking for that, but it would not have worked for McDonald's, right? It's just not the way that they operate. It's not their brand essence and so forth. And helping brands create that kind of a focus, I think, is just absolutely essential in what we do. And making it clear that although we sell software, for instance, which is what mostly I work on, right? What we're really trying to do is solve a problem, and that our team is there to solve the problem. We're not just trying to sell you. It's not $99 software. Almost everything I work on is like ultra enterprise, 100,000, 250,000, $1 million plus software, right? You don't just give it to them bye-bye, right? You're talking to them about what is your vision as a company, what is your dream, and how are you going to help them achieve their dream with it. And we can do that. But at the same time, and it's like, again, one of the things that I really sparked to about you, right, was ultimately, though, a business is about opportunities and sales, right? And so we do not have the year that we used to have to develop like one TV commercial. That's when I started in the business, that we spent an entire year talking about one 30-second ad. How did we do it? There were like 11 of us at the agency talking about one ad, right? And we also made $3 million on the account, right? So the fees are compressed and everything else, but we need to understand what companies need this very day and deliver that, right? And so I say Stratacution about my business because it's like we're gonna spend 2 or 3 hours figuring out what we think our positioning is. At the end of that, we're gonna say that's our positioning for now. And we're going to start writing SDR emails and putting up banner ads and all that. And we're going to try it. And if the market salutes, then we're going to keep doing it. And if not, then we're going to adjust it a little, right? Because fundamentally, we're probably in the right area, but we may not have found the perfect words, right? But
well, that's the concept of testing and failing fast and having that kind of robust framework for learning. So I love that.
Right.
And I think too, my framework that I'm operating off of couldn't be more high level, but it's like they have to have heard of you and they have to like you, right? And especially for B2B, because when you see the stats that not only 5% of your target audience is in market at any time, especially to your point of enterprise or agency contracts, you're going to have the sales cycle is 3 to 5 years,
enormous.
Right? They have to have heard of you. Then they have to have a favorable opinion of you in relation to you have the solutions that they need. You can do something for them, to your point of like saving them time, solving their problem. And then, of course, there's pricing and other aspects to it. But you need those first two to be always on, trying to get the attention so that when they do hit that 5% of the time, or the 5% of the audience hits that moment when they're ready to buy, they already like you. You already have your foot in the door. And it's not your BDR being their first point of contact with the brand.
Yes.
And that's where I see a lot of the B2B companies missing. So that's why I love your Stratacution approach.
This podcast is brought to you by Break Room Labs. Break Room Lab gummies for energy and focus feature an optimized blend of low caffeine, vitamin B12, and nootropics to refresh your mind and body in as little as 5 minutes. Low sugar, tasty, and convenient. Get 20% off when you visit breakroomlabs.com.
Yeah, to me, we do a lot of times think like we give an SDR the task of reaching a CMO. Like it ain't going to happen, right? Unless the company's very, very small, it's just not going to happen. And so how do you demonstrate that what you're doing is important and different from other people? I think the marketing has to be different as well, right? And the years ago when I worked at ValueClick, which became Conversant, which became Epsilon, which is now part of Publicis, but we had a program when we launched our new positioning where the sales team needed to answer the phone and take a meeting. That's what we needed them to do, right? And they were agency buyers, and it was IO-based media, right? So 4-week contracts. We're not trying to sign people up for a year. So the program that the team developed was called Answer the Call. And we actually sent 10,000 burner phones to 10,000 people in the advertising agency business. And we did things like we contacted the mail rooms at large agencies and said, we're going to send a box to you with a gift card so that you will open the box, and inside were 100 of those interoffice envelopes with the signatures on them. You remember those with the string and all that?
Yep.
And they would walk those around on Tuesday morning and put them on people's chairs. So this hits your chair and you open it up and it said, sometime in the next 36 hours, this phone is going to ring. And if it rings, you get the chance to, you get either a $100 gift card or a trip to the Bahamas or something. I can't remember. We had 94% of the phone calls were answered, right, of 10,000. So we booked 5,600 in-person meetings because in order to get your card, you had to take the meeting. We had to bring it to you. We wouldn't mail them, right? And so what did we do? We got people to answer the call and take a meeting. And to me, that's like perfect marketing, because what sales told us was we need people to answer the call and take a meeting. It's like, well, here's how we're going to do that. It was an expensive program, but 5,600 meetings and something like, I don't know, $29 million in contracts on $1 million investment. We spent a lot of money on phones, but 29, our ROAS is not bad.
Yeah. Well, and you bring up a good point too. That's an incredible ROAS. And so it's not expensive, right? It's the perspective of how you're looking at it. You made an investment and it had an extraordinary return. So it's,
well, that's it. And you have to have, and it's all about the execution then too, right? Because what made it work was we'd integrated FedEx with Salesforce so that when the FedEx package was delivered, there was a note in an appointment was set in Salesforce, call this number in 4 hours, right? And so it had time to get to the person and all those kind of things. And then we had to have the salespeople all ready for 36 hours to just be working phones, right? So it was huge coordination, and it requires trust. And I think a key part of a marketer's role is to make that sales and marketing relationship work. Everybody has an interest in it, but ultimately we have to be the ones that make it work, right? I don't know, maybe you would disagree with that, but like I want sellers focused on selling, right? We're relationship oriented people. We know how to work that, right? So we need to have great relationships with sales. So I can say to you, spend 36 hours making phone calls. It's going to be worth it. And they trust me.
Right. Well, and I think too, I do agree with that. And the trust also comes into the proof, right? So if you're helping them with that narrative, they can't, they know that this is what we're going to say when they answer the phone, or these are, the marketing team has already put together the narrative of the key attributes, the differentiators, how we're going to help their audience. So all they have to do is be the conduit and the relationship builder, but they don't have to come up with the consistent narrative that's going to demonstrate how we're better. Yeah.
Right. And I'm sure you've worked in organizations just like I have where there's no time spent on training salespeople, right? And this is, again, when you get the super seller, like you've got a superstar CEO who can sell the product. So they hire 3 expensive SaaS sellers to come in, right? But there's no training. It's just like, there's your phone, right?
Yeah.
Like
go
you
call
can't do that.
You used to know. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Call, everybody in your Rolodex. Okay, well, that's a morning. And then what do you do after that? And what is the story you tell? An example I would give is I remember sitting in a pitch once where the product company I worked for had great international credentials, but they were selling to AT&T, which by law cannot compete outside of its markets. So
Yeah.
the fact that we are really good at making payments in China is completely useless to them, right?
Right.
And it shows how clueless we are that we don't know that they're by law, those kind of moments, like marketing can really equip sales in a big way to do those things. And
Yeah.
it's why I think marketers should be measured based on opportunities created, because sales decides whether they're an opportunity, right? This MQL stuff, I just think it's all a game, right? Like I can give you 40,000 MQLs tomorrow. They just won't be real,
Yeah.
right? But when it's an opportunity, that means somebody else has decided that what I did had value, right?
Yeah. Well, and it comes back to like the key fundamentals of its relationship building, and especially in B2B, it's going to take a long time. Like I think that's the expectation that B2B CEOs and executives need to understand. And obviously that changes with the type of product you're selling. I just signed up for a QR code subscription for a year. It was $50, $60. Like, did
Right.
that take a considered purchase?
That was a
No.
morning,
But
right? Less.
right. But the less, but the when, to your point, when it's a 6-figure subscription relationship or long relationship, it takes time. And so it could be 3 years, and it's building that relationship over time. And I just want to give a shout out to conferences as a conduit to relationship building, because I think conferences are expensive, and that takes a long time. They take a very long time to convert. But as you mentioned earlier, you and I met at a conference, and there's a
Wouldn't
lot
have
of
met any other way,
no,
right? Wouldn't have.
and
So,
there's a lot of conversations and relationships to be had at conferences that may not convert. In my experience, people have been like, where are the leads, where are the contracts signed at that? And no, but now I have these people in my network that I will continue to reach out to and continue to see at conferences. So
well, let me ask you a question
yeah.
about that, right?
Yeah.
Because
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious about this. This is learning experience as much for me, right? So
Yeah.
how do you then demonstrate to your organization that you're doing something, right? And I don't mean that in a condescending way, right? But you and I both also know that you go to conferences, and let's say the expo floor, like the booths, right? And you wander around and all the people in the booth are talking to each other as thousands of people walk by, right? Because everyone's a little afraid to talk to them or whatever. Or alternatively, they go to the event and they talk to their friends, right? And so you've just spent $3,000 to send a salesperson to New York for 4 days for some conference, but they come back with nothing. So how do you demonstrate the value of your approach and that long-term outlook? I'm curious as to how you do that with a CEO.
Yeah. So, I think conference strategy could be its own podcast episode,
It
but
could.
absolutely, you do need to show return. I think the expectation just shouldn't be that you're going to have a signed contract in a month. So it's, these are the people I met with, and absolutely, I've come home from conferences with a list of 20 people that I got to know, and then 30% or 40% of them don't respond, even though you like broke bread and drank prosecco. But it's that now they're in my network. Now I'm on LinkedIn with them. Now I'm engaging with them. And now, and I'll tell you, with my podcast, a lot of my guests have been people I've met at conferences over the years, because it's where I get to know industry thought leaders. And when they are in market for what I have, then there I am. We have the relationship. But I do think also, to your point of, you have to find the right personality. I've managed sales teams for many years, and I have one former teammate who, you send him to any conference, he comes home with 100 contacts, because he's just that outgoing social guy. And so you need to make sure that you're balancing who you're sending with the people who are curious and are just
Hey,
good
audience, listen
socializers.
to that. That is so key.
Yeah.
Right? Not everybody can work a conference.
Right.
Not everybody can
there's
deliver it.
Yeah. And then, you just have to set the KPIs in advance, but just make sure they're not, oh, we're going to get return on this conference in the next 3 months. It might be a year. And I've seen it be a year, and it just takes
Sure.
time.
And the more expensive your software, the longer it's going to be, right? I completely agree
Yes.
with you. Like I did a podcast about a year and a half ago, and they were like, not in the digital world, right? It was really more for entrepreneurs that were beyond Silicon Valley or whatnot. And
Yeah.
he said, "So what tools do you use in order to, meet clients, right?" And I said, "It's conferences and LinkedIn." And he was like, "Well, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Like you're in digital. Why aren't you doing emails and this? And I thought you would have ideas about how to make X work and blah, blah, blah." And for me, it's like, it's not how I win business. There may be people who can do
Yeah.
that, right? But
Yeah.
um, I'm just kind of a genuine person. I'm myself. I can go to an event and turn it into money, but I'm not walking
Yeah.
around, as are you, going, can you sign my contract? Right? It's
Right.
really about listening, having ears that work, and saying, "Oh wow, how's it going in your new job? Great. Da, da. Oh,
Right.
okay. Well, if you're having trouble with that, I'm just saying I could help if that would ever be useful to you." And a lot of times people sort of put you off, at least initially. And it was like, "Hey,
Yeah.
not trying to pressure you. I'm just telling you I do that for other companies." And
Yeah.
sure enough, like 4 or 5 days, a week later, you get a call. It's like, "Well, can you tell us how you would do that?" And it's like, now you're
Yeah.
rolling, right?
Right.
So to
It's
me,
the
conferences and
engagement.
events,
Yeah.
each one does a different strategy. You're going to ASE next week, right? Affiliate Summit
I'm
East.
going
So
to
am I.
ASC. Yeah. Yep.
That is a peculiar event, right?
It is.
But I think in an amazing way. Like some people think it's just chaos. It's like it is, and that's what's awesome about it, right? Because you
Yeah.
can find opportunities to connect with people everywhere, right? Two of my best
Yeah.
business contacts that I've gotten more business from anybody else, I've met waiting for the incredibly slow elevators in the Marriott Marquis,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I didn't start by saying, "Do you want to sign a contract?" It was like, "Oh, where are you from?" Blah, 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 right? Like, and you just get it rolling and have a genuine conversation.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to end this with one successful conference story. And that is that at ASE last year, I was at one of the dinners and started talking to a woman, and she said, "Oh, what do you do?" And I said, "Oh, I work for an agency. We specialize in this." And she goes, "Oh, we're talking to some agencies right now about that." And I said, "Can we throw our hat in the ring?" And literally, within that one was a short sales cycle. It was lucky because she was in market. That's
Right.
the thing. She was already in market. To be clear to anyone listening that thinks this happens all the time, but I always kind of pictured it as myself doing like a dive in the end zone as she was already ready to sign with someone else. I said, "Hey, what about us?" And so if I hadn't been there, we wouldn't, and hadn't struck up conversation with a random stranger who is now, a friend, it wouldn't have happened. And I think that doesn't happen at every conference, but it just reiterates the
That's where the
importance of
opportunity
being
is. You're
person.
right. And,
Yeah.
I'm basically an introvert, right? But I sort of make myself do a little bit more, right? I'm not
Yeah.
ever overwhelming in my view, right? Like, but you push yourself a little bit, because if you hadn't had that conversation, you wouldn't have had that opportunity, right? If you'd been talking to another employee at your agency, which most people do at events,
Yep.
right? You wouldn't have found that opportunity. So I
Well,
completely
and if I
agree with you.
hadn't been lucky enough to sit next to you at the Performance Marketing
I'm the
Association
lucky one.
brunch in
So,
Vegas, then we wouldn't be here today. So, Jim, I'm grateful for meeting you, and always good to jam with you. And hopefully we will have you on again, and I get to see you in person in a week.
awesome.
So,
Yes, next week.
yeah.
All the best. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for the opportunity. And I'm
Thank you,
so
Jim.
excited to
Thanks.
see your progress and growth. Thanks.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Revenue Boost, a marketing podcast. If you need help with unlocking business growth by integrating your marketing and sales team, be sure to visit revenuebasedmarketing.com. Our next episode is Scaling Revenue in a Multi-Channel World, Mastering Awareness and Demand from TV to TikTok. Don't forget to subscribe to Revenue Boost, a marketing podcast, for more strategies to skyrocket your company's growth.